Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. Happy July. It is time to do my June wrap up. I read 18 books in June, technically. We'll get into that in a second. As always, we will start with my lowest rated books and work our way up to our highest rated book. Spoiler, I did not have a 5-star in June. I'm really sad about it. But let's go ahead and start because I'm not finished with this book yet. This is Swan Song by Robert McCammon. I am 70% of the way through, but it is over 900 pages. So I'm not technically finished with it, but I am counting it in my June reads because I've read 70% of it, which is like almost 700 pages in June. So I think that counts. Obviously, I can't give a rating or a review to it right now because I'm not actually finished with it, but this will be my 18th June book. If you want to see like my full review, you can follow me on Goodreads or add me as a friend on Goodreads. Everything is linked in the description. So with that one out of the way, we're gonna start with our lowest rated book. Unfortunately, I did have a 1-star in June, and that book is Cold People by Tom Rob Smith. I read this in my apocalyptic horror reading vlog, or just my apocalyptic reading vlog, and to put it simply, it was trash. It was not good at all. I don't want to get into all the specifics again. You can watch that reading vlog if you want, or if you want to see me break down in detail everything about this book that didn't make any sense, you can go over to my Goodreads review. It is very long, so I don't blame you if you don't want to read that whole thing. But yeah, I just don't want to get into all of it again. There were so many plot holes, so many things that just didn't make sense. The characters, I despised them the entire time, and to be quite honest, it was trash. It was dumb, and I just want to move on. I don't want to think about this book anymore. I don't want to talk about this book anymore. But unfortunately, I would advise you, if you have this on your TBR, maybe don't read it, but everybody is entitled to form their own opinion. So that was my worst book of June, but I don't have any other low-rated books. We're just moving into 3 stars now. So my first 3-star is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, this is book 4. Book 4 in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is just a little novella. It gets called like the Hallmark Christmas Special, and I think that definitely perfectly describes it. We just kind of spend time with these characters and everything's happy and fine, and it's just more of like a bridge from book 3 into book 5, which I'm scared to read, but I didn't really have strong feelings towards it, so that's why I landed with a 3. I kind of feel similarly with this one. You Know What You Did by KT Nguyen. This is a thriller by, I think this is a debut author. We are following this woman who has OCD, and we start off with her mother dying, and then later on we discover that she kind of was forming a relationship with this man, and then she wakes up next to his dead body and she starts to remember different tragedies and things that have occurred in her life, and she starts to really question herself and her involvement in those different things. It was interesting. I thought the main character was an interesting perspective to follow, especially with her OCD, and then her like questioning herself makes her an unreliable narrator. I'm not always a fan of unreliable narrators, but I did think it added some interesting elements to this story. But at the end of the day, it was one of those thrillers where I don't have any thoughts, to be honest. I don't really remember that much of it, and so it just slides right into the 3-star category. My next 3-star is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This is another thriller that is just sneaking into that 3-star category. This follows a woman who witnesses her son stab somebody, and then when she wakes up the next day, she's actually a day back in the past, so the day before this incident happens. Every time she wakes up further back in the past, so now she has to figure out if she can find a way to prevent this stabbing or try to figure out why it has happened and what her son's involvement with these people and this man is. I did think it was interesting, but I just feel like it really started to drag through the middle. It was very long for the story that was told, and I just don't think it did anything like exceptionally out there or exceptionally crazy in my mind. I know this is very well loved, and I kind of hyped it up for myself because of that. I've seen so many people love this book, but for me, it wasn't all that great. I don't know, it was just not great, not horrible, just okay. My next 3-star was Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. To be honest, I am kind of second guessing my rating on this one. I almost want to bump it down, maybe to 2.5 stars. I don't know if I would leave it fully at a 2, but I feel like 2.5 kind of sums up the way that I feel. And I'm actually shocked because like every review for this book that I've seen is like 5 stars. Like people are eating this up, and I just don't get it. I feel like I've read like a different book than everybody else. Like I don't understand why it has so many 5 stars. So in this book, we are reading from the perspective of Bella. She is 8 years old, and she has this entity called Other Mommy that supposedly is living in her closet, or that's like where she came from. And at first she was just confined to the closet. She wouldn't come out, and then she started to come out and sit next to Bella's bed. And then Bella started to see her in other parts of the house, not just the bedroom. And then there's an incident where Bella sees her out in public. Things definitely escalate very quickly in this, and very soon Bella's parents become able to see Other Mommy as well, which, aside from all my other feelings, I thought that was a really interesting element, because oftentimes you get these horror stories where this kind of thing is happening and the parents don't believe the child, or the husband doesn't believe the wife, or vice versa, or things like that. So I thought it was a really interesting element that the parents could see this entity and were actively trying to fight against it with their daughter. I really like that. I feel like that's definitely a scary element to it, when you have this thing that the parents can see but they still can't protect you, because you know, when you're a kid, like, your parents are supposed to be the ones that protect you and keep you safe from everything. So I thought that was a fun element. However, I wasn't super into the narration, like the perspective of Bella, because she is 8 years old, and her I don't know how to say it without sounding mean, but like the workings of her mind are very simplistic. You know, she doesn't really think very complex things. And so because of this being in her mind all the time, everything is so repetitive, and the dialogue just sounds so strange, and I'm not sure why. However, my main issue with this story was that I just didn't feel like fully pulled into it. And I don't know if that had to do with the perspective, because we're reading from a child's perspective, and like I said, it's very simplistic, very repetitive. I just didn't feel fully in the story. I didn't feel fully invested in anything that was going on. And there were a lot of like scary scenes. I've seen people say that this is a book that like legitimately has jump scares, but I did not get any of that scared feeling that I was wanting. Like, there were some things that I was like, oh, that's creepy, like, ew, but it never actually scared me or unsettled me in any way, and I wasn't just the biggest fan of the way that the story went. It also felt very strange as far as pacing, because I feel like everything happened very fast, and there were a lot of things happening, but it also, because everything that happened went by very quickly, it also at the same time it felt like nothing happened, because we didn't get to sit and sink in everything that the characters were going through. The ending for me was just okay. I think on its own it is a good ending, but because of the rest of the story I just wasn't really connecting with, it just didn't hit, and at the end I was just left wanting more from this book. But like I said, there are a lot of people that love it, so definitely pick it up if you feel like you'll enjoy it. Maybe I am just in the minority here, but I'm also excited that this book is now out, so more people will read it and maybe more people will be along the same lines as I am. I'm very curious to see everybody's thoughts. My next 3-star was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I am glad that I read this, and I'm glad that I read it this year because this is a dystopian kind of sci-fi novel that takes place starting off in 2024, and then we kind of go to 2025 and then 2026. It increases from there, but definitely a good time to read this book because it starts off in the year that we are currently in. This was written in the 90s. Octavia E. Butler is a very, very popular author. I have 2 other books by her on my TBR, but this is the first one that I read, and to be honest, it was kind of a letdown. Like, I don't know, it just, once again, I hyped it up really, really high in my head, especially because it's been around so long and is so well loved, but then it just let me down. I really liked the first half of this book where we get introduced to the dystopian world that we're in, and we get introduced to our main character, Lauren. We start off with her when she is 15, I believe, and she is living in sort of like a gated community, and there's just a lot of things about this world that have gone wrong. Climate change, corporate slavery, there is just violence and drug addiction increase, and everything's just kind of crazy. So she supposedly lives in like one of the safer areas, but it is not very safe for very long. I don't want to give away too much, but I really liked the first half of the story, and then the second half things kind of started to drag for me, and then by the end I was like, can this book please just end? Like, I'm over it already. Lauren is a very interesting character. She has this kind of affliction where she can literally feel other people's pain, and I thought it was really interesting the way that they described it. Like, when she was younger, even the sight of seeing somebody bleed would make her bleed as well, and she just physically feels the other pain that people are in. So there was some interesting commentary and like discussions around that, and the idea of if everybody in the world could feel another person's pain, would there still be people inflicting pain on others and killing others? And I really liked seeing Lauren grow up and kind of wrap her head around these different ideas in the world and why people are choosing to have children in a world that's like this. And Lauren, as, I don't know if it's a source of comfort, but a way to kind of make sense of the world around her, she kind of develops a new religion called Earthseed, and she writes all these different like verses and tries later on in the story to get some other people into this Earthseed community, and her goal is to establish a place to sit down and gain an Earthseed community. I personally was not a big fan of that stuff at all. I don't know, I just couldn't connect with it. I thought it was kind of unrealistic because she is this young girl, and I'm like, I just don't see how multiple adults are following this young like 18-year-old girl who doesn't really know what she's doing. It just didn't seem realistic to me. And then also like all of the Earthseed writings just felt very fake deep. Like they were like, I'm 13 and this is deep, like type of quotes, if that makes any sense. However, I do think this book holds up and it is a good read. I would definitely recommend it, and that's where we're leaving it for this one. My next 3-star is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. Unfortunately, I felt similarly to this as I did to Mary when I read that, where the setup, the beginning, the first part was super interesting. I love the atmosphere that Nat Cassidy created in this book. I loved the like vampires. I thought they were so fun, and the descriptions of them were a little bit creepy, but then it just started to drag. And this book is not long at all, but it felt like it was so freaking long because the second half, to me, I don't know why, it just seemed to drag. And then also like the descriptions at first were really, really interesting, but then there were certain words and phrases that were used multiple times throughout the book to describe different things, and then it kind of lost its impact on me because there was just so much repetition. It was hard to ignore it. There were different things within the plot that to me just didn't make any sense, and overall I wasn't a super big fan of this one, but I will continue to read from Nat Cassidy. I'm very excited for his upcoming release, and I hope that one goes better. And my last 3-star read is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. So in this one, we are following our main character, or our main female character, Rue. She is a doctor, she is a scientist, she is working at this startup and doing a lot of like lab research into like food science, I guess. I don't fully understand all of the science stuff in Ali Hazelwood's books, but she's working at this company, and then there is this other company that is trying to like buy, I don't know how to explain the whole thing, but they're trying to buy a part of the company that would then give them control over everything pretty much, and all the patents and all of the different things that they're developing within this company. And Rue and one of the guys from this other company kind of start a friends with benefits situation, but there's a lot of like tension there, obviously, because they're kind of working for like rival companies. So it was interesting. It had some interesting elements. Ali Hazelwood does state herself that this is more of like a smut and like erotica book than a romance book. It definitely was, but I didn't mind it. I don't always read like smutty things, but this one I didn't mind that much. I thought there were some good parts in it. Overall, I think the main thing that didn't connect with me in this book is our male main character, Eli. I just feel like there wasn't really a lot of depth to him, and he also kept bringing up his ex-fiance when him and Rue were together, which was a little bit strange. He was definitely sweet at times, but it was definitely like more of a steamy physical attraction type of relationship for most of the book before things go further than that. I don't know. I don't really have a lot to say. It was okay. I don't read smut a lot, but I like Ali Hazelwood, so I'm probably gonna read anything Ali Hazelwood writes. So now we can move on to my 3.5-star books. Up first is Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is a novella that comes after Powerless in, I don't know if the series has a name, the Powerless trilogy? Is it a trilogy? I don't know. Not all the books are out yet. Anyways, Powerful follows the side character, I can't remember their names right now, and I don't want to look. The main character's best friend in Powerless. We are following her story in Powerful. She is a seamstress. They're living in this poor district, and it's just a little novella of like her life after her best friend goes off to these trials. She kind of starts a little bit of a romance, and the ending is very sad. And that's all I'm going to say about this. My next 3.5-star was Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay, which is another one that I read for my apocalyptic reading vlog. This follows a woman, a pregnant woman, and there is this outbreak of rabies. There's this big rabies pandemic. Her husband dies, gets attacked by a rabid man, and then he also bites her. Her name is Natalie. He bites her. She's pregnant. She flees out of there. She goes and finds her friend who is a doctor, and then the entire story is just following these two women on their mission to allow Natalie to have this baby safely. They know that the chances for her are very slim, but if they can get the baby out before the rabies really sets in, then it is most likely that the baby will be fine and healthy. So that's really it. The whole story is just following these two women and the different situations that they get into by trying to get healthcare for this woman. I thought it was interesting. It was very fast moving, and because of that, it made it hard to put down. Like, it's definitely a easy, like, bingeable read where you could read this in one day because everything just happens so fast. It's very action-packed. The only thing is, I was just kind of waiting for something crazy and unexpected to happen. I feel like Paul Tremblay, there's always like this big thing that happens in his books, and that just didn't happen in this one. I think, like I said, just because it's Paul Tremblay and also because it's an apocalyptic novel, and from what I've read from both of those things before, there's always like a big unexpected scene that like really sticks with you, and this one just didn't have anything that stood out, so it was just okay. My next 3.5 star I also read for my apocalyptic horror reading vlog. This is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I had never seen the movie. I didn't even know what the story was. Obviously I've heard of it. I've seen the movie poster with Will Smith or whatever, but I've never seen it. I didn't know what it was about. And this is a vampire apocalypse book. So we're following this man who is the last survivor, or at least in his area, he's the last survivor of a vampire apocalypse. For some reason, he is just immune to this bacteria or whatever it is that turns people into vampires. So he's just kind of living his life, and he goes out during the day and gets all his stuff done that he needs to get done, and then he kind of holes up at night because that's when the vampires come out, obviously. It was interesting. I enjoyed it, but once again, it didn't really leave me with any big thoughts or feelings. I liked the way it ended. I liked different things that happened throughout the story, and I am glad that I read it. And now maybe I'll watch the movie. But I know the movie's zombies, I think. I don't think it's vampires. I don't know. And my last 3.5 star is Youth Juice by E.K. Sathu, I believe is how it's pronounced. This is a wellness / beauty industry horror. We are following this woman who works at this company. She gets asked to test out Youth Juice, which is this new moisturizer. It starts to do incredible things for her, and she slowly uncovers what the secret ingredient of Youth Juice is. To me, this was Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. Obviously, I have to bring that up. That was one of my top books for last year, and it does deal with very, very similar things, the wellness beauty industry. So think of Natural Beauty, and then think of Bunny by Mona Awad, just a weird fever dream group of girls getting involved in strange things, and then also kind of a Mean Girls vibe. And I feel those three together is this book. I really liked it. I think that there were some really good visuals in here, which I don't know if that makes sense because it's a book, but the imagery that I produced in my mind when reading the descriptions on the page were very nice visuals. I feel if this was a movie, it would be very, very visually aesthetically pleasing. It kind of has that vibe to it, and I really like that. However, I feel I didn't really connect with the main character in here. She was making a lot of decisions that not necessarily I didn't understand, but I didn't understand her motivations with it. I feel I didn't really know the main character very well, and I just didn't really understand why she was doing certain things or why she was reacting to other things in the way that she reacted to them. So because of that, it wasn't my absolute favorite, but it was fun. It was gruesome, and I would still recommend it. Moving on to my 4 stars. The first one is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware, the new Ruth Ware release. She is one of my favorite thriller authors, or just somebody that I'm always going to pick up her books and see what she has. This follows these two people, this couple we get introduced to at the beginning. I don't remember their names, but they kind of get into this reality TV show. It's not necessarily a dating show because everybody that comes there is coupled up, but they're gonna be on this remote island, and they're gonna have different challenges throughout the time that they're there, and the challenges can pair them up with different people, and the idea is that there's going to be one pairing that is the one perfect couple, and then they can decide if they want to be together or if they want to be with their original partners, that type of vibe. So the reality TV part of this isn't really a big element. It's just kind of the setup for everything, because their first night on this remote island, a big storm hits and they get cut off as far as communication, and they're just left on this island. They don't really have any of the crew. This is a show where it's the first time that this is being filmed. It's never been done before. They've never used this island before, so nobody really knows what they're doing. They leave, I think, one member of the crew on the island, and then everybody else leaves. So it's just like the contestants and then this one crew member, and then that crew member dies in the storm anyways. So the contestants are just kind of left to fend for themselves. They have no communication. They do have like food and water, but they really have to ration it out because they don't know when anybody else is going to come back to the island to get them. They don't know if the crew also got hurt in the storm, so they're just kind of waiting it out to see what happens. And then tensions rise, everybody's true colors comes out because this is a group of people that has never met before, and some interesting events take place. I think this was really fun. It was very, very fast paced, very action packed. Like, it was more of like an action survivor thriller than like a traditional thriller. I don't know how you define a traditional thriller, like a mystery thriller, I guess. This was more of like action and survival. There were a couple twists, but I feel like none of them really came out of left field. I feel like you could kind of predict, not predict, but you just know that something is going to be revealed, but it was fun and I liked it. My next 4-star is Full Brutal by Christopher Triana. This is an extreme horror, and this is very appropriately named because things definitely go full brutal by the end. This is wild, this is crazy, this is unhinged. We're following this girl in high school. She's kind of cuckoo in the head, and she gets this idea in her head that she wants to lose her virginity to her teacher. So she goes about doing that, and then she just kind of devotes her time to fucking with this guy and his family, and then just goes off the rails towards the end of the book. I, once again, really liked the first half of this, I think more than the second half. The first half for me is like a 5-star, and then the second half dips down a little bit, and that's why I landed on a 4. But I liked the buildup of like her just starting to increasingly do more and more messed up stuff to these people. I read this for my 24-hour readathon, and I did say this in there, but I feel like it perfectly sums up my feelings for this book, so I just want to say it again. But to me, this book was like, I don't know what the saying is, what people say about car crashes, where you shouldn't look, but you just can't turn away because it's just so, like, you just want to stare at this really fucked up scene that you shouldn't be like wanting to look at. That's how I feel about this book, where I was like, I don't want to read this because it's so fucked up, but I can't stop. My next 4 stars is a nonfiction, All in Her Head by Elizabeth Coman. This is a nonfiction book, as I already mentioned, but this kind of goes through like the history of women's health basically, and the way that women were viewed in medicine. So she breaks down the book based off of like the systems of the body. So we have like skin, heart, muscular, skeletal, like that type of breakdown, and then she goes through each system and starts in the past with the crazy things that people used to believe before modern medicine. And it was really, really interesting. I feel like I learned a lot of things, but it's also one that will make you upset at times and make you outraged at times, just to think of the horrible things that women have gone through as far as like in the medical field, and the way that women are still treated to this day. Definitely not nearly as bad as it was back in the day, but this is an eye-opening read, and I thought it was really, really fascinating. And my last 4 star is another thriller. This is Before We Were Innocent by Ella Berman. This one I picked up because it seemed like a really, really good summary type of read, and it definitely is. It's got very, very high summer beachy vibes. So if you're looking for like a beachy thriller for this summer, I would recommend this one. This is about these 3 girls that were friends, and one summer they go up to Greece and they stay in this one girl's home that she has there. They're newly 18. This is their first time like being out by themselves. Some things happen. One of the girls dies, and then we are following the other 2 girls in the future coming back together. One of them is now involved in another scandal with her wife that has gone missing. So they come back together, they connect in unexpected ways, and we get to learn about the truth of not only the present, but also what happened in the past. This one for me is like, I don't really have any reason or justification for why I gave this 4 stars. I can't tell you any specific details that I loved or didn't love. For me, this book was all about the vibes. and the vibes were high. I was having a great time. Like I said, a really good like summery thriller, and it was just fun. And that's all I really have to say about it. And last but not least, I did have a 4.5-star read this month. That was the book of The Unnamed Midwife by Meg Ellison, which I also picked up for my apocalyptic reading vlog. This takes place in a world that has kind of been ravaged by this fever. There was a big pandemic, and this fever mainly was affecting women and children, and it led to childbirth not really being a thing because people were losing babies while they were pregnant, or they were being stillborn. Women were dying in childbirth, and there just really hasn't been any new births for a while. So we have this woman, she wakes up in the hospital, everybody's dead, she can't find anybody from her previous life, and all she knows is that she was working in the hospital, she got this fever, and then she was in a coma or something, and then she wakes up and everybody's dead. So now she's traveling through this like barren land, and she disguises herself as a man because most of the survivors at this point are men, and they are willing to do just about anything to get their hands on a woman, and it's very, very difficult to read. This is definitely one that I would say use caution with if you are triggered by certain things, because it's hard. It doesn't hold back as far as like describing any of these brutal, horrific things that happen, but despite that, it was a fantastic read. Obviously, there's a lot of commentary, but it was really just such a captivating story and a captivating journey as we're following this woman. She's doing everything she possibly can to help the remaining women that she stumbles upon. It was just very, very well written. Like I said, very captivating, really holds your attention, but definitely hard to read at times, so use caution. That brings us to the end though. That was all 17 and almost 18 books that I read in June. I'm really hoping that I get a 5-star soon because I'm dying. Maybe Swan Song will be a 5-star. I don't know. I am really enjoying it so far. If you guys watched, once again, my apocalyptic vlog, I started this, but I decided to put it down because I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time that I was filming that video, and I wanted to be able to upload that video on time for when I had scheduled it. So I picked this back up. Don't worry, it's going well. But that is everything for my June wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you next time.